They did not raise kings like children. They broke them first. Before a crown ever touched a head, before a throne ever accepted a body, the future king was taken away. No witnesses, no family, no mercy, locked in silence, taught pain before language, fear before power. Because ancient civilizations believed one terrifying truth: a man cannot rule others until his identity is destroyed and rebuilt. Tonight, you will witness the secret training systems hidden behind royal bloodlines. Not myths, not legends, but psychological machines designed to manufacture gods in human form. And once you see how it worked, you will never look at power the same. Again. Every ancient civilization faced the same problem. How do you convince millions of people to obey one fragile human? Not by force alone, not by armies, but by belief. A king who hesitates is dead. A king who doubts is dangerous. A king who feels human will fail. So ancient societies reached a brutal conclusion. The king must stop being human long before he begins to rule. This is why royal training was never public, never written in full, never spoken aloud. Because it wasn't education. It was identity erasure. Across Egypt, Mesopotamia, China, the Americas, Africa, and Europe, the process always began the same way. Separation. The child was removed from normal life. Not gradually, not gently. One day, the parents simply stopped seeing them. In Egypt, royal children disappeared into temple compounds. In Sparta, boys were taken at 7. In Mesoamerica, heirs were locked inside priestly enclosures. In China, future emperors were raised behind walls they would not leave for years. No siblings, no toys, no comfort. Because attachment creates weakness. And weakness was treason. Isolation wasn't punishment. It was programming. The first tool was silence. Days without speech. Weeks without explanation. Months without reassurance. Why? Because silence collapses the ego. Modern psychology confirms what ancient priests already knew. Prolonged isolation breaks the internal sense of self. Thoughts turn inward. Fear multiplies. Reality becomes fluid. In this state, the mind becomes rewritable. And that is when indoctrination begins. Pain was never random. It was precise. Cold exposure. Hunger cycles. Sleep deprivation. Ritualized endurance. Spartan heirs were beaten publicly. Mayan nobles bled themselves voluntarily. African royal initiates were scarred permanently. Chinese princes were forced to kneel for hours without movement. Pain served 3 functions: obedience conditioning, emotional numbing, separation from common humans. A king who does not flinch cannot be controlled. But pain alone wasn't enough. The mind had to believe it was chosen. Once the child was broken, the story was introduced. Not gently, relentlessly. You are not like others. You were selected before birth. The gods watch you more closely. Your suffering proves your destiny. This is classic mythic conditioning. Every culture used it. Egyptian pharaohs were told they housed Horus. Chinese emperors were taught they carried heaven's mandate. Inca rulers believed they were literal descendants of the sun. European kings were anointed by divine will. The king did not claim divinity. He was convinced of it at some point. The child was declared dead. Not physically, symbolically. Names were changed. Clothing was removed. Hair was cut or marked. Blood was spilled. This was the ego death ritual. The old self, son, brother, child, was erased. What remained was an empty vessel, perfect for power. This is the most disturbing part. The future king was shown his reflection, not as he was, but as he was expected to become. Masks, statues, painted gods, ancestor spirits. He was taught, "This is you now." Repeated exposure fused identity with myth. This is how a human begins to believe they are inevitable. Before coronation, the final trials began. ordering punishment, witnessing executions, choosing sacrifice victims, watching loyalty tested. The purpose? To remove empathy without removing intelligence. A ruler who hesitates kills an empire. By the end, the king did not fear death, did not fear judgment, did not fear rebellion, because he no longer felt human consequences. The crown ceremony was never the start. It was the confirmation. The public saw a god. The priests saw a success. The king saw destiny fulfilled. But behind the gold and chanting was a child who had never been allowed to exist. Empires lasted centuries because their rulers were manufactured, not elected. This system created emotional detachment, absolute authority, mythic obedience, psychological immunity to guilt. And that is why, when modern rulers try to imitate ancient power, they fail, because the world no longer allows the training. But the consequences remain. The greatest secret of ancient kings was never their wealth, or their armies, or their bloodlines. It was this: power was not inherited. It was engineered.